It's time for my annual Wacky Races video. And this year, to make up for last year having literally nothing because I Mandela affected myself, I've got a special treat for everyone watching because I've been able to get into contact with two of the main developers for Wacky Races for the Dreamcast and PS2. Those being the head of the project, Antony Crowther, or as he prefers to be called, Tony Crowther, and the director for the Dreamcast version, Mark Glossop. I sent both of these guys a long email with a massive list of questions that only they would know the answer to. And this video isn't going to contain all of the questions that I sent because only a couple of them received a proper answer, so the ones that got answered will be the ones you're seeing in the video. Just as a couple notes before we do begin, this video was also supposed to contain Travis Ryan's emails, but I wasn't able to get through to him. I sent it to his personal email, it was full. I sent it to his work email, he didn't reply. Hell, I even burned my free trial for LinkedIn Gold just so I could use one of the 5 messaging tokens you get, which is a completely dogshit system, by the way, just to see if he would reply to that. He did not reply. So, thanks for wasting my time with that, Travis Ryan. That probably delayed the release of this video by like a month or so. But then again, this is also the annual video, so you know what, whatever. On top of that, Crowther's emails are going to be slightly altered from what he actually written. That's not to try and change his opinions or anything, because nothing that he said was fundamentally changed. It's more so just that, Tony, a little bit of advice from me to you, you should probably get a proofreader for these emails. And as a last note before we do begin, huge thank you to Nick RP Green and Morkit for voicing Tony and Mark respectively. This video wouldn't have been the same if it was just me reading off everyone's emails, and it would have come off as super duper awkward, so thank you to those two for reading off these guys' emails. So, let's start this wacky race already. First of all, it's an honor to get into contact with both of you. Believe me, it was not easy to find your emails. But considering I've got your attentions now, let's start with a question that people have been wondering about pretty much ever since the game was released. Is there any particular reason why only the Dreamcast version got a release in the United States?
We were not in control of what location the game was released in, and I have no idea why the PS2 version was not released in the US.
Okay, so to add on to that, a few years ago, an unused audio file was found in the PS2 version of the game, which was an unaltered version of the theme tune for Cheeky Cheeky Machine Moo, which is the version of Wacky Races released in Japan. So a lot of people have been theorizing that a Japanese version of the game was planned to be released. Is this the case?
I don't think Infogrames published games in Japan. In my experience with Gremlin, all Japanese versions of their games were published by another publisher more used to the vagaries of that territory.
I distinctly remember working on a Chinese version of the game. We normally just do the eFigs version, so English, French, Italian, German, and Spanish. It was added at the very end, but we don't remember adding a Japanese one.
Okay, so while we're on the topic of things that weren't seen by the players, we might as well get this out of the way. What was the history behind this game's development, and at what point did everything start clicking for the team?
It started out as kind of a generic kart game as a way of exploring the capabilities of the brand new Dreamcast console. A big name-licensed IP was new territory for us. Prior to being taken over by Infogrames, Gremlin was an independent publisher who created its own IP, such as Zool, Actua Soccer, etc.
We started with a design concept very similar to Diddy Kong Racing, and once we got a hold of the Wacky Races IP, that's when everything started to click.
Okay, here's another thing. From the 2 early builds of the game that have been leaked online, those early builds both have a completely different map to what was seen in the final game. Was thinking of a hub world difficult for the team? And if so, what aspects of it were tricky?
The hub was constantly revised as it was never particularly obvious where you were supposed to go. I vaguely remember we had to come up with some yellow thing that tried to show you the way.
A lot of the changes for the main hub world was solely down to the design, as all of the other hub worlds functional, but we never really clicked with the hub world's design until right at the end. It's why the hub world is largely the same from Dreamcast to PS2.
Here's another one that the community have always been quite stumped on. The original version of Crimson Drive was meant to be the Crimson Haybaler's flight ability. Problem is, the Haybaler's always flying. This was changed to bring the Haybaler to the ground in the PS2 version and give him more grip. The community's theory behind why this is the case is that they have guessed that the Haybaler was originally supposed to be a grounded character like everyone else. But then this was changed, presumably quite late into development, and then the team forgot about the ability or didn't have enough time to change it. Is this theory true?
I do remember that the original version of Crimson Drive would cause a whole load of bugs where you were able to cheat and escape the world. That's why he hops instead.
Right then, so we can chalk that down to being a hoax, can't we? But either way, now that we're on the topic of items, were there any items that didn't end up making it to the final game that you guys distinctly remember developing? Because there are a lot of icons for some either unused or completely altered items that can be found even in the release version of the game without having to dive into any old prototype builds.
I vaguely remember a weapon that turned you into a block of ice, presumably removed for playability reasons.
Interesting. Okay, so staying on the topic of prototypes, one of the later prototypes for Tombstone Pass had an engraving on a tombstone that was a direct reference to the Back to the Future series. Was this supposed to be a placeholder, a joke within the team, or something you actually wanted as an Easter egg that got rejected before the game was released?
Level designers always try to sneak something in whatever game it is. It may seem innocent, but can be serious, as I have seen games having to be withdrawn from sale because something inappropriate was included.
Okay, here's an interesting one. Why is Peter Perfect's AI so aggressive? This is specifically pointed towards the PS2 version because he's a character that lobs out attacks at a similar rate to the boss characters when the AI is controlling him. There's even a theory that his AI aggression was accidentally swapped with the surplus. Is this true?
I think the producer of the PS2 version was more of a gamer than me. Maybe he wanted a harder challenge?
Interesting. So while we're on the topic of changes from the Dreamcast to the PS2 version, a lot of people have speculated that the reason the PS2 version exists is to add unfinished content that wasn't seen by the player in the Dreamcast version because of a seemingly tight schedule. Is this rumor true or false?
Most of the art changes made from the Dreamcast versions to the PS2 versions were solely done because of new ideas that came from the team, not to add in content that was supposed to be in the original release.
Alright, to cap things off, do you two still have any content related to the game in your possession, such as early builds for the game or the software used to make the maps? If you do, then the community would have their minds blown if they were released to the public.
The trash were created in a bespoke tool. Tony Crowther wrote it, and he still works at Sumo. You may want to try to contact him.
I don't have any unreleased builds, but it's possible Infogrames has it in an archive somewhere.
Alright, thank you for taking the time to answer these. It's not the easiest thing in the world to get into contact with you guys, especially when the company behind the game doesn't redirect you to any of the original developers.
Yes. I'm sorry I can't be more of help. I am sure some of my ex-colleagues would be happy to answer questions if you can contact them. Thanks, Mark.
Cheers, Tony.